Hey folks, thank you for joining. We had about 20 registrations, most of which are here from 7 higher education institutions across Australia and New Zealand. So there's a lovely opportunity here for you folks to connect with each other as well as hear from Lax about his research. I know a number of you, some of you dating back a very, very long time. Lovely to connect again, some more recently. And what useful thing was I going to say? I got all distracted by I got all my head started going how I know all these people. Sorry, for the people I don't know, that's where I was going. People I do know, lovely to see you again. People I don't know, you must know someone I know, which is how you probably found out about this. So welcome. My name is M. Campbell Pretty. I'm the founder of Pretty Agile. We are a scaled agile framework training and consulting company. We've been around since 2014. And one of the things we've been doing for the last year is playing in the space of AI native training. That came to us via Scaled Agile, who, in addition to creating an AI native stream to their business, acquired or built a partnership with a organization called the Return on AI Institute. And that means we get access to Lax. Lax is the CEO of the Return on AI Institute. He has recently had his research published by HBR, which impresses me, even if it doesn't impress anybody else, although it seems to impress a lot of people. And Lax doesn't really seem to like me saying that, so I feel like I should say it again. In fact, I believe he's had 2 articles published in short succession, which is very impressive. Anyway, given that Lax was hanging out in this part of the world, and I've been spending quite a bit of time, I guess, over the years in the university sector talking about agile, and more recently talking about AI. I really wanted to open up the opportunity for Lax to share. His research and riff with you guys as much as you like about AI and the impact on the higher education sector. And I think without further ado, Lax, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, Am. And I do recognize Quentin and Kimberly. So if I say whatever I say today is the latest, if it's completely opposite of what I said yesterday. So just with that disclaimer, I learn every day. With that, let's get started. Okay, hopefully it's coming full screen. I'm the co-founder. I actually founded the Institute, Return on AI Institute, with actually Tom Davenport, who's a professor at Babson. Some of you may know he literally wrote the what is considered the Bible on competing on analytics a while ago. As a prolific author, and I'm honored and privileged to have had the opportunity last few years to work with him closely at the institute. The research is economic maturity of AI. We're going to talk about key findings, and I'll take about 25 minutes or so to go through, and then happy to do a Q&A. As Em said, this is a research it just got published, and which I did with Professor Davenport. Um, okay, so let's get started. And by the way, the institute, given this audience, the theory of the institute was, it's not about AI, it's what you get back. And I spent most of my career in data analytics and AI in different capacities, product innovation, and executive capacities, and Tom coming from Professor Davenport, coming from research. The idea behind the institute is continue to advance research and kind of extract best practices and kind of disseminate that language through structured programs. And so this is consistent with that, what you're about to see. The motivation for the research, so why were we interested in this subject, is I think we counted there were about 75 maturity models, and yet There's none available on economic maturity. And so the getting value from AI in this increasingly AI-driven economy is really critical. That is, it's good for OpenAI and Claude and NVIDIA. We're all spending a lot of money, but as a society and as an economy, it's really critical that we all see some value back. So that was one of those motivations behind what's going on there. And what is value is really mixed messaging going on. A lot of studies that kind of say that the doom and gloom of only 95% of projects fail is really what we feel is all around what we call broad and shallow AI, and mostly around excessive piloting around generative AI. And that's pretty much kind of driving all the stories about value. And the third one is there's so much hype around AI. So we try to get at some insights that we wanted to understand around these three things, and I'll share that with you. Hopefully, some of that will be useful to you today. Um, though I seem to be competing with lunch for for some of you. Let's see if what you remember after lunch. The research given this audience, it was the survey design. We did some qual and quantitative. The quantitative was 1,000 plus executives surveyed, 11 countries, 32 industries. And we wanted to make sure we are talking to folks that have been at this for a while. And so clearly, if it is for some audience, it's a shock. Like, wait a minute, you're saying AI and you're saying 6 years, and clearly AI existed long before ChatGPT came on the scene. And the respondents were 100% C-level or direct reports. So they were knowledgeable. They had the vantage point that they could actually, qualify for the study to respond. So we're hearing from folks that I think we should pay attention to. This I did not present at the Harvard Business Review. We did an editorial webinar of the study, but this one is special to Australian audience. Is We found 51.5% of Australian organizations, respondents in our study, they said they're getting high or great deal of value from AI, and compared to 44.8. So Australia is doing pretty well compared to your peers around the world. We also found kind of what's really driving it and what's still ahead, that to get even more value. And this was kind of somewhat counterintuitive to us that Australia included, Germany, UK, UAE, and Japan. USA was like 38.2% of respondents said they're getting great deal of value from AI. With everything going on, our hypothesis is that USA, clearly all the frontier labs, there's so much focus on the LLMs and kind of the technology itself. We find the rest of the world is far from all that kind of hype, that you're focused much more on how to adopt it, and most importantly how to get value from it. And as I told you, that I'm learning every day, that I found that this Australia, while getting high value, the executives are actually a lot more skeptical than an average global executive. And I was told last night, somebody came up to me when I had this talk, and somebody said, "Well, you could, it's just how we are in Australia. We're just skeptical people." And so there's nothing special about AI. And I said, look, good, because maybe that skepticism gives you kind of being open-eyed about which AI, and more sober about it. So I don't know which is cause and which is effect. Whether you're skeptical, you're getting high value, or you're high value, so you have learned to be skeptical. But that's maybe research coming in the future. If you're interested, we could do that. So the one of the first things we wanted to find out, as I said, AI existed before. So what are the different types of AI? What is creating value? We started with our AI definition is much broader, right? Rules-based AI, and then analytical AI is clearly the kind of machine learning, and we threw in optimization and a lot of the statistical predictive analytics, and all of that goes into analytical AI. McKinsey calls it classical AI, but we like this term. generative and agentic, as you can see, 50% of respondents say that they get the high value from analytical AI, most reported value from there. And we also measured kind of easy to measure, hard to measure the y-axis. If you believe everything you read about generative AI, you think that's where all the value is coming from. Clearly, that's 9%, is what is, even though we're all paying $20 a month to frontier lab companies and gets a lot of hype, but it's lowest value reported. Agentic is interesting, early stages, a lot of people experimenting. So 2% of respondents doing agentic say they're getting high value, but whoever is doing agentic, it tend to be 22% more likely to say they're getting high value. So compared to generative AI, so it's hard to measure. Agentic, is seems to be a much more defined and concrete, because perhaps it's automating things that you're used to. It's saving time and much easier. It's not like at the individual level. These are at the system level as well. So it's a high value, and people are doing agentic. Now, we found something interesting in the Australian data is, somehow folks trying agentic AI adopters in Australia, they actually disproportionately say they are getting more value from agentic, and compared to only 60% globally. So there's something going on. Either companies that are really mature, perhaps are using agentic, and therefore they know that agentic is like obvious they're getting value, or perhaps sophisticated technology companies are more adopting AI. So this is kind of important. There's 41.4% difference in Australia, if you're into agentic in terms of getting high value from it, which is clearly two times what we find in the global benchmark. So that's that. And then we said in our study, that what are these companies that are getting great deal of value, or organizations? And by the way, our sample had small commercial, mostly commercial. So I know this audience is full of universities, higher ed. We may have had some universities, but the sample is clearly biased much more towards commercial. But I would imagine, given the subject of economic maturity, I would imagine that what works for commercial organizations, perhaps, I mean, universities still have to pay bills, and you're still in a very constrained funding environment increasingly. So I would imagine a lot of this still applies to you. And happy to take questions where we think this may be not applicable to university versus not. We can have that discussion. So with that caveat, let me get into the 7 factors. And I'm going to kind of go one by one, clearly around, what is value, this kind of using AI in both product and process, kind of the dual focus, a mixed approach. Framework gap was kind of interesting for us. The most striking finding from our research, that I love talking about, is the CFO effect. When CFOs get involved, 76% companies, get high value, and then the two-tier fluency gap. And then I will leave you with, if there's one thing you remember from today, I want you to remember this maturity model, 6-stage maturity model, which we think is pretty interesting. So factor number one is be clear on what value means, because there isn't an industry consensus on value. It's on the eye of the beholder. However, that companies that are getting high value, we do find a lot of sophistication in how they define it and how they go about it. This number 14%, we found it interesting. And we asked them, are you getting no value, some value, high value, great deal of value? And we also had another question that said, are you getting low ROI, high ROI? We thought there will be correlation, but 14% of companies that report great value, but also say they're only getting slight ROI. So there's a bit of confusion, but you can see here Capital One, which is a very data-driven company or organization. They're sophisticated enough that they don't measure everything by ROI. There are AI bets that they are making. They know they're much more transformative in nature, and they will look at like return on equity, for example. So that sophistication matters. And then AI in products and processes, kind of, you're applying for your own internal kind of AI for improving productivity. but also more important, we think more value is actually in embedding AI in customer-facing AI, which is more market share strategic, it's a more competitive advantage. And you can see here that when we look at what makes a company take that leap and putting AI into products and services versus just doing internal improvements of efficiency plays is Olympus. Julian, who runs the US side of Olympus, they say, well, there's a lot of competitive competitive pressures forces companies to take bold steps in like putting AI because putting embedding AI in products and services is it's a longer play. It takes a while for it to see if you're getting value from it. So that requires pretty board level and CEO level kind of commitment and conviction behind AI. So the net of all of this is organizations doing both, meaning process and products, and also have the sophistication of measuring value differently. They seem to be getting the most value from AI. The factor number three is uh, 3x finding. So, a lot of what you read about these days is what we call broad and shallow AI, which is uh, which is Copilot for all. And when companies do that, is 20% of them say they get great deal of value. And in fact, I work with organizations. Sometimes they're like, well, we didn't even know Copilot is available because sometimes IT turns it on and they put it in some obscure SharePoint places and that's it. They expect employees to just voila, just jump in and do it. And when you do what we call narrow and deep AI, these are kind of purpose-built AI. You may be using frontier models, but you're now building applications on top of them. These are vertical applications on top of them. When you do that, for example, we heard we heard earlier today. I think I'm losing it, but earlier today that even in universities, there are use cases of applications of narrow and deep AI, which is helping students actually practice in a virtual reality or simulated environment on how to, storytelling and making presentations and so on and so forth. So when you have that kind of narrow and deep AI, it's much easier for you to measure. And those organizations say they're getting 31%. But when you do both, it kind of makes sense that you get a lot more value. Those organizations get much higher value from AI. So it's kind of like factor. You saw the four different types of AI. So you shouldn't be putting all your eggs in kind of the latest shiny object. These organizations actually use a sophisticated approach of trying all different types of AI and all different approaches. And for some of you in the audience, if you're very process oriented or kind of if you're a chief methodologist uh, kind of title person, I think you would love this. Is we found about half of the respondents say there's no standard framework. But what is more interesting, those organizations that they're getting high value, they say they're getting high value, they're more likely to cite this as a problem. So what this is that the more value you get, the more you realize that the more you can get, but you're kind of stuck. You're kind of making things up. You don't have a rule book. There isn't a gold standard methodology for value creation. And as you can imagine, our partnership with Scaled Agile, the reason we are partnered up is Scaled Agile established SAFe, which is a gold standard methodology for scaling Agile. And so we think there is an opportunity to establish a similar type methodology or framework for helping organizations to scale. And and so what do companies do? Is the ones that are getting high value, though they're saying they're kind of improvising. But we found good examples in our qualitative interviews. CarMax, they take product orientation. And this is extremely important, kind of project versus product. Wow. Um, is product versus project orientation. What happens is that if you're in a project kind of operating mode, you solve the same problem again and again. For example, you may go and curate data for a particular AI, narrow and deep AI solution, but then there's somebody else in the other side of the organization. They just do the same thing all over again. So if you have product orientation, you start with the end user in mind, you have some design thinking, you actually put some time, designing things properly, and all that does is it allows you to reuse and scale. So you start kind of every application you do, you actually build reusable assets that allows you to scale and also helps you to do kind of AI with much more efficiently. And we also found kind of some companies using stage gate models, especially in early stages, like if you have a lot of thousand flowers blooming in your organization, a lot of experimentation, stage gate maybe is a great way of kind of a good divining rod to find which ones make it out of the pilot purgatory into the real world. But it's very varied. There's we couldn't find any pattern in what they're using. We even heard, if any of you are familiar with SAFe, we even heard somebody saying they actually use the SAFe methodology for even managing and prioritizing AI projects. So it's kind of pretty much anything goes as long as you have something at this point. So the CFO effect is 76%. So value responsibility in organizations when it comes to AI typically lies with CIOs, CTOs, and if you have a chief data analytics officer, or now these days they're now called chief AI officers, and sometimes also in functional leads like VP of marketing, and so on, supply chain, and so on. And what we find is when CFOs are part of the equation in value accountability, 76% of those organizations that have CFO responsible for AI value accountability, 76% of them get high value. That's the good news. The bad news, only 2% of organizations from our survey say they actually have CFO involved. And I even have worse news. In the Australian market, is 0% of organizations have CFO involved. And that was me when coming in. But since I've been here Monday, I know it's not zero. At least a couple of folks in our workshops, they actually said they just emailed their CFO. So I think this is what we are finding is that it's not CFO is actually, knows more about AI, but when CFO is part of that equation, they bring a lot of institutional credibility to value kind of attribution of AI. And that means that that management teams and even employees they build more. I would say they believe in value creation more, and that gives more confidence and conviction. They invest more. So it's a very important kind of piece of the puzzle that we were not really expecting it going into the research. And let's see here. Factor number 6. This is really, really important, I think, for organizations, and I would say a society writ large, is all of us need to build some base level of fluency, right? No matter who we are in the organization or as citizens, this is affecting all of us. But what we find is the companies, organizations that are getting really high value, they don't do one or the other. Is they train employees, but they also invest in leadership training. And those companies do that. There's a 23-point difference in value creation when they take the dual approach. And we find that perhaps that 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 employees, I would say these days, we asked organizations of kind of what are the barriers or inhibitors to getting more value, and we thought like employee resistance, but only 13% cited employee resistance as a inhibitor. So we think it's really they're waiting for leaders to get kind of familiar with it, build some intuition around it, have the conviction to invest and make those bets. And we also think that a lot of there's a lot of fear clearly around what can AI do to their jobs. And one of the articles that we wrote an article in HBR about this research. The first one we published was actually called "The AI Layoffs Are Driven by Expected AI Performance Than Actual AI in Production." So that means executives are making hiring freeze and headcount decisions based on what they think they're going to get from AI. And we actually found that's pretty dangerous because you let people go and then you find out AI is actually not doing what you thought it was doing. So then some of them end up actually hiring back. And and New York Times wrote an article also on this. They call it the AI washing. Um, and and I say that it used to be when you do headcount reductions, usually people think that that your organization is in trouble, you're cost cutting, but now it's actually fashionable to put it on AI, and they think you're really a sophisticated organization and you're doing more with less. And I think what we're finding is there's a lot of, I would say there is a big gap between evidence and anticipation of what AI is going to deliver. So this is an important one. I think given this audience, you're in the business of educating future employees, future leaders, and this is an area I do work with a bunch of universities, and and I think what we are finding is employers want students to be ready on day one. So this is not about um, students learning about LLMs in a comp sci class. This is really about, can they really, do they think like an AI native, in the sense, do they do everything today using AI? So it's really a mindset shift, and are they really geared up? Because the employers don't want to be training them when they hit them. They're hiring students that are well versed in these. Um, and and I would say for this audience, maybe it's I just heard this the other day, and I'll share this. Agentic AI is clearly disrupting software engineering, right? That it used to be a two pizza team. Amazon, Jeff Bezos used to say that each team should not be larger than two pizzas can feed them. But now I think it's becoming probably one pizza team or maybe even one slice team, right? There people are talking about one-person trillion-dollar companies. OpenClaw, if you know about OpenClaw, and that guy just in his pajamas over the weekend was pushing out things that just gets just adoption. But we do think that, for example, last year, a lot of companies, organizations like CEOs and others, they come and ask me saying, Lax, what should my kid do in college? Like, what is this one occupation that you think is really safe? And I get that question a lot. I used to say that, well, you should really have your son or daughter really go and build applications, and in interviews you actually show, you tell rather than talking about it. But now I heard that if you look at Silicon Valley, I think things have moved on. So now they're hiring students by actually they make them create like a massive application like Twitter. So you use AI to build a kind of simulation of Twitter, and then they're making students actually go and, let's say break Twitter, or they have an AI agent goes and breaks it, and can the student go and use another agent to fix it? So clearly, the agentic AI is taking the organizations in a much faster clip that I would say students are not prepared. And I think us as community of higher ed, I think we have responsibility for getting the students ready for the future. Um, with that, the final kind of drum roll on the last factor is the six-stage economic maturity model. Is we found from our research these six stages, and stage zero is on unmeasured pilot. And the stage one is production without assessment. So you pretty much deploy AI into production without really saying what is it going to do for us. Pre-implementation assessment, stage two, is these companies put a business case together, so they have a point of view on what this AI is supposed to do when they deploy it. And then stage three is once they deploy, these companies go and actually look at what it is doing compared to expectations, what they thought is it's not intent, it's like inspect. And stage four, our companies, stage three companies can tell you each narrow and deep solution at the use case level. They can tell you what value it's creating, but they can't tell you what it's doing at the organization level. At the university level, what is AI doing for you? Stage four companies can make that statement. And for example, DBS Bank in Singapore say AI is generating 1 billion Singapore dollars for them at the company level, at the organizational level. And stage five, is they actually report. They actually commit to the board or they commit to externally to shareholders. And the numbers you see on top are the percentage of companies in that stage they say are getting high value. Unmeasured pilots, 4% of them saying they're getting high value when they're just doing experimentation. I guess they're throwing a bunch of things on the wall and maybe something they hit on something that perhaps is valuable to them. And you can see the inflection points. So stage 2 to 3, there's a big kind of inflection point there. And if you do that, all it takes you is go and look at what you deployed and see if it's creating value. If you do that, that's a 24-point difference in terms of value creation. And the inflection point two, stage 4 to 5, which is you not only aggregate, but are you willing to actually report it to the person? And stage 4 to 5 is not technology. In fact, later stages, it's not technology, it's more accountability, right? Once you say, I'm going to create $1 billion of value to your board or to your shareholders, you're more likely as management team are forced. It's a good forcing function. You're more likely as a management team to make the hard organizational decisions. And and as with AI, it's to get more and more value. You have to rewire a lot of your business processes and rethink how you do things today. And all of that requires a lot of management conviction and support. And that's what you get from stage 4 and 5. But there are only 16% of the organizations that we surveyed are in stage 5. And so there's not a lot of companies who have made it there. And 30% of organizations are stuck in stage 3, and the median time they spend there is like 5 years. So we think they really do a lot of hard work, uphill climb from stage 2 to 3. Once they get to 3, they feel like they have arrived and then they just kind of go about their way. So depending on where the organization is, that this is really an important model that we think is got a lot of potential to unlock value creation for organizations. And one last slide to give you a bit of good news. And I'll leave with this. And if you feel, by the way, this you can apply at the functional level, you can apply at the organizational level, enterprise level. You can see here in Australian market, the respondents we surveyed, the inflection point is even twice as large in Australia as globally. And I don't know, stage 1 to stage 2, it actually dips. It looks like stage 1 production without assessment, so maybe they are much more optimistic. I thought they were skeptical, but looks like they're rolling the dice and putting things in production, and then they find when they go to actually implement pre-implementation assessment, they kind of get a sobering look at it. So we think in Australia, stage 2 to 3 is probably where a lot of value creation for organizations are, because most of them we find are in stage 2 or earlier. Okay, with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions.
Shy people are allowed to put questions in the chat. I will read them to Lax and it will be like nothing ever happened.
Either I was so clear, no questions, or I was completely absolutely didn't make any sense. I mean, let me start it. I mean, how many of you think this is even relevant to kind of higher ed?
Highly relevant in my organization, Lex. I've been testing some of the things that you spoke to our group about yesterday and actually seeing the opportunity to apply some of your thinking across other contexts that we're working in. Really, really useful. And I had a question from yesterday. If it helps, I can ask another question.
Sure.
So We've been on a journey here at the University of Auckland in adopting AI foundations, and so have trained over 100 people, I think, now, and it's been absolutely transformative in terms of our ability to apply AI in a way that's business led, not just the tooling that we've acquired along the way. But my question is, what signals show that an organization is becoming AI native, i.e., AI is embedded as a business capability, not just scaled tools stacks?
Oh, I don't know if that's, I would say it's not one signal. Um, and we have a model for what AI native, what its kind of point of arrival looks like as an AI native organization. To me, it's like, do they think and act, as AI native? I'll give you a simple example. I thought I knew AI of being in this space for a while. I sat in the foundation class. For me, the aha, the unlock was, um, if you use AI like the Google search plus, like chat with it, I think that's one level. But I was challenged in that class to say, can you take everything you do and find the most frustrating thing you do every day, and will you put in the time, learn, and actually, automate it in a way that changes your life? So to me, it's like, how do you think and behave at the employee level is one, and the same thing applies at the leadership level. As we said, that we also, Tom Davenport and I wrote another piece called the strategic and tactical return. Most companies are really applying AI to the tactical, which is equivalent of us chatting with ChatGPT, and very few companies are really doing strategic, which is, are you embedding AI in your products and services? Are you fundamentally, changing or innovating on your business model? Are you rewiring? Are you redesigning business processes that you have, or are you taking the existing business process and then you're just bolting on AI? So to me, it's there's a kind of a bottom up personal mastery of AI, and then there's a top down view of leadership down into, have you fundamentally kind of changed the organization inside out? And there are companies doing that, by the way. There's one in Australia that we spoke to. Very impressive. But that takes a lot of leadership, conviction, and ambition and drive. And the easy thing to do is just, applying, making a chatbot available for your customers. That's the easy thing, right? But anything beyond that requires process redesign, and investments that may take a while to pay off. Those are real executive and management decisions, leadership decisions.
From a university perspective, across the strategic portfolio, we see executives leading back into more traditional ways of thinking often, i.e., I've got a business problem, I've got more students that have turned up, I need more people to process the volume of applications that I've got. And I guess from our perspective, one of the things we're trying to do is encourage leaders to think about, how does AI come into the conversation to help you to automate those processes so that you can manage the resource scarcity that we have in the university more effectively.
Hmm. Yeah, I think we talked about that yesterday, I believe, Quentin. So to me, is there's I give a talk called, Outcomes First, AI Next.
Mhm.
And most organizations start with AI first, and then we'll figure out the outcome, right? The stage zero, one, two, they're all in that bucket. Um, and we used to ask this question, like, why do companies do that? Like, what makes this executive, I use this framework called jobs to be done, and which is really a good framework for innovation, right? You get a much higher batting average when you use that kind of framework. And I asked the guy that kind of turned that into a science I work with. I told him, like, why do people do that? Why is it, as human beings, we like ideas first? Why do we chase, like, solution chasing problems? And the only answer I got out of him we are so uncomfortable as human beings, especially executives with short attention span. It's easier to have a hypothesis and run with it than to ask what Harvard Business Review calls burning questions. So to me, I think the secret in unlock is how do we get them to, do this? You should look at the burning questions, Quentin, if you want to. It could be a good exercise. And I think if we can get them into the ask questions first, and we have seen that kind of slow them down in chasing the next kind of shiny object.
Relax. I think there's a couple of interesting questions that have popped in.
There are. Um, Next one for you, Lax. Do you think that the high value seen with the CFO effect is driven by value being defined primarily in dollars by the CFO, whereas others might struggle to define what value is?
Um, no, we think it's more, in my own experience and the research is they just bring institutional credibility to numbers. And we get this question a lot, like, really, we should involve the CFO and he's going to bring all of this wonderful strategic work I'm doing with AI, he's going to bring it down to dollars and cents. Is that what we want? And to me, I think it's just more. Look, if CFOs are not accountants, right? They're supposed to be business partners to the executive team. I mean, most importantly, the CEO. So CEOs also are strategic. I'm sorry, CFOs are also strategic. They're not accountants. So we think this is not about, even when CFOs involved, they'll struggle to define value, but they bring that level of sophistication. They know when it's a what initiatives they need to look at ROI quantified and get a short-term payoff, and they know which initiatives require return on equity, which takes much longer. So to me, it's more that than CFOs, making it quantifiable. Um, and I see one more question. Just curious, how would CFO-driven AI application differ from CTO or CEO? Yeah, this is a good question. I didn't mean to mislead you. So that slide is not to say when CFO is involved, CFO is in charge of AI and the CIO, CTO steps back. That's not it. In fact, what we are seeing is in the early stages when the functional leaders own AI, they actually step back more. CIO, CTO is still driving technology, especially as you mature. But CFO is part of the conversation, is about value accountability lies with the CFO. Right? They're holding CTOs and CIOs accountable. Like, for example, I don't know if you read it, the Uber CTO, I saw an article the other day, the Uber CTO saying they've already burned through their entire year's AI budget. It's already what, April now, end of April or May now. I'm sure those CTOs will go to the CFO and say, "Give me $1 billion more, and that'll be over." So CFO is going to be like, "Wait a minute, what's going on here? Where's the values?" It's that equation that CFO is being part of that equation is what we think is going on there when we say the CFO accountability. It's value accountability. Yeah, sorry, it's May.
It's the jet lag.
No, that article came out a week or two ago. I'm not that jet. I try to be precise. I'm speaking to a higher ed audience and it's being recorded. So try to be
Lax, do you want to, have you got, another question quickly from Quentin. Why not? In public sector context, and universities as part of the world are generally considered, not for profit type organizations or whatever there's a specific word for it, but it's like not for profit. It's a little bit different to the States, I think. So in public sector context, where do leaders most often misread AI economics beyond cost out and what value narrative actually holds up?
God, I mean, I would say that um, for nonprofit organizations, look, they still have to pay bills. So I think, yeah, clearly, the cost out is a factor. But to me, the value narratives are, I do believe if the leaders they're putting out visions. I work with universities in the US, some, and, there are some that are bold in reimagining what the learning experience of tomorrow is going to be like. There are some questioning saying, do you really need students, especially year one, chemistry 101 and those kind of courses, do we really need to be taught like in classrooms, or is there a different immersive experience that students can get? So to me, the value is going to be more around the value narratives are more around, what to teach students and how to teach, at least in this context. It's more mission driven. But I also think that, if you look at government and other organizations, they're very budget driven. So, right. So they're all trying to figure out. Actually, they're saying, well, if I use AI and make myself more efficient in a use it or lose it world, like I'm going to get less money next year. So why should I do? What should I do? So I believe that in non-commercial settings, there's slightly different sets of issues going on, but you know, I would say in the US, at least if I look at universities, and I asked Tom, who's part of an AI task force of his university, and he's just saying like they're just simply still figuring out what to teach and how to teach, and they're less. I don't think they're even in the value narrative frame yet. It's moving slowly. They're much more earlier stages, just because they can afford to.
Thanks, Lax. I was wondering if we wanted to quickly give a little bit of context. If you've got your the circles on hand, give a little bit of context to the AI native framework that we've been talking about. Some of the folks on the call will be familiar with Scaled Agile, so frameworks will resonate, and then I'll create the link for the training for folks who are trying to just link it all together in their minds.
Sure. Tell me if you're seeing things that I want to share, or you're seeing things that you shouldn't be seeing.
Well, we're seeing Lax has started sharing, but it actually isn't sharing, which is a crack up.
Give me 1 second here. Somebody turned on like this ring light on my Zoom, and give me 1 second. I'm almost there. Oh,
I might have them if you're stuck.
I have no, I have Stage Manager on my Mac, and it just creates all kinds of issues here. Okay, so I think what M was talking about is this
Yeah,
here that I
that
can
one there.
share.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about here is, so you saw in the research, even companies more successful they get with AI, getting value from AI, the more they realize they're improvising. They don't have a gold standard framework like SAFe for AI. And from our research and years of experience in the institute, that this we believe is kind of the 8 elements that define an AI native organization. And I call it the two circles. I think Adrian, you called it, what did you call it? Binoculars or spectacles? Um,
Eyeglasses. Yeah.
Eyeglasses. Okay, eyeglasses. So you can see these elements, and some of them are kind of management kind of prerogatives. So the AI strategic intent, if you look at that on the left, clearly having a North Star and what should AI do for your organization is important. That's typically board or CEO said that. Is AI really central to achieving your mission or business objectives, or is AI kind of a tool in the toolbox? Once you make that decision, we call it the money map. I know for nonprofits and universities, perhaps that may be a dirty word. Maybe call it an AI value map. In essence, it's a systematic way of identifying opportunities and kind of having a portfolio of opportunities and managing it like you would manage a portfolio. And that's really important. And that's where you define what am I expecting. This is your pre-implementation assessment. So a lot of that becomes the discipline. And then AI native workforce I talked about is all employees. Do they think and the mindset shift happens. And of course, governance and ethics on the enabling capability side is important, given AI it's very powerful, but in the wrong hands can create a mess. We read about it every day. So it's important that you set those policies and controls and on guardrails, and also ethics. And data is really an important piece. Companies that do well with it, they have much more sophistication. In fact, they take product orientation to data, and you can read about it. And Tom has written about it. It's called data products. So this is where I was talking about that, data is very messy in organizations. So it takes a lot of effort to clean data, but when you have the clean data, you want to have a product orientation that once you cleaned, the data should be available to everybody in the organization. And then clearly technology is important. And is that operational AI tech? And agility, if you're all safe, this is a tipping of our hat to that. I would say by definition, you're going to have to be agile, but we want to call it out. But the most important thing for us is the human centered AI is the most important because there's so much misinformation, disinformation that just think like AI is going to replace us all. And we believe that the answer to that as organizations and citizens and society is how do we reimagine everything we do with human in at the center. So these are the 8 elements that companies, organizations that do well with AI, they have these elements. And I say that people ask me like, so which one do I do first? Essentially, this is one of those like you have to do. This is like a simultaneous equation. So you have to kind of like you have to do everything everywhere all at once with respect to AI. You can do it sequentially, and what we find is there's a good way to see where you are in these 8 elements, and perhaps gives you clues around where your gaps are, which one you're over index, under index, and how do you bring this into harmony. And this is not a one time. It's not a destination you arrive and then you stop moving. This is going to be kind of a living, breathing thing because the ground is shifting all the time with respect to AI.